So again, section B is going to have these, typically you're going to find this information however the headings are used in the RFP that interests you. You're going to have a scope, so what is it that you're buying? What is it that the VCC wants to buy? The scope is going to tell you. Might not have the full details, but it'll have enough information that you know what it is. You get full details as you read through the RFP. Okay? It may include information on what's not included. So sometimes we're hiring a contractor to do some work, but we already do a piece either in-house or with another contractor, so we're going to have an out-of-scope section to letting you know this is what's happening with that piece. Okay? Term. Absolutely vitally important that you know what the term is. So this is the dates that the contract is valid. And it can include options to renew. And the reason this is so vital, do you remember I said you're bound to everything you said in your proposal? So if you won the contract, how long are you bound for? Do you know? It's for whatever the term is. So if the term is 1 year, you're bound for a year. If the term is 5, you're bound for 5. You see what a difference that makes? If you're talking a 5-year term, we want to have firm pricing for 5 years, and you've got to figure that out within your organization. Well, I can do the first year just fine. Second year is probably okay, and after that, it becomes a bit of a guessing game, you know, as to what your costs are going to be, so what your prices should be. Okay? You need to know what the term is, because that's how long you're bound for. And at VCC, we often will use options to renew. So the term might be 2 years with 3 one-year options to renew. So that means you're bound for the first 2 years if you're successful. And then if we're going to do the options to renew, that's our opportunity to make changes. Might be in pricing, might be in approach, minor changes though. We're not changing what we're buying. We're substantively the same services. But we're going to make our tweaks and changes as we need to with the options to renew. And that'll be a negotiation back and forth between you and the college to come to an agreement. And hopefully we can do that. And if we can't, it means we don't have a contract anymore. Okay? Budget. Budget may or may not be released. Okay? If it's not there, you can ask for it, but we might not tell you. And there's reasons for releasing a budget and reasons for not. We often will release a budget if we know that for our wish list, we're never going to be able to afford our wish list because we just don't have the money. So we might put out an RFP that says, how much of our wish list can you give us for the amount of money that we've got? And we're going to tell you the budget in that case. We might even make it a mandatory. Proposals must not exceed X dollars per year. Right? That might happen. Other times, we really want the vendors to sharpen the pencils, and we think we've done a good job of describing exactly what we want, so we're not going to give you a budget. We might even weight price heavily in that case. And so then it's up to you. Give us the best price you can. Ask for the budget if you want to, but we in those circumstances, likely won't give it to you, which then means, is there enough information in the RFP, otherwise, that tells you the scope of the work that we want to buy? Are we buying the Cadillac version or the Chevette version? If there's not enough information in the RFP for you to know that, ask the questions you need to get that clarity so that you know where to price. You're going to have desirable requirements, and this is just when we talk about desirable requirements, these are things that get scored in any RFP. So at the end of the day, we award to the highest scoring. These are just my headings: approach, capabilities, price. Approach is all the how-tos. So if you got this contract, how would you deliver it? Capabilities, what do you have right now that tells me you're experienced and able to do this? You know, maybe your facilities, your equipment, whatever. And of course, price is how much. Couple of things to tell you about in these sections. If you are talking approach, and remember, not everyone's going to use these headings, but they're going to ask you at some point, how are you going to do something? If you're asked how, you want to make sure you talk about what you are going to do if you were this contractor. So I might get a response that says, well, when I had the contract with XYZ agency, we did A, B, C, D, and F. And it might be what you did before is exactly what I'm looking for. But in approach, you're going to score 0. Because you did not at any time tell me what you're going to do for this contract. You gave no binding language to say what you were going to do. Okay? Same problem can happen if in your proposal you use words like, we could do this. You could do it. Does that mean you're proposing it, or that it's an option that we might be able to pick up? I don't know what could means. Use binding language. If this is what you intend to do, we will. Our company will. That's very clear. This is what you're going to do. And if the RFP is asking you how to do something, your response should not be, yes, we will do it. with nothing else. And to be honest, I could tell you some very large companies whose names you would recognize that did exactly that. How will you do this? Yes, we will do it. Okay, we didn't ask you if you would or not. We asked you how, and there's nothing. So you score 0 for that. Capabilities is all about experience, for your organization, for your people. Might be about facilities, might be about equipment. What have you got right now? Might be bench strength. How many people do you have available to you with these qualifications? It really depends on whatever the RFP is about. What do you got right now? So this is where we do want to know about what you did in the past. That's where you're going to score. Okay. Now, benchmarks should be provided. And when I say benchmarks, I mean that's just VCC telling you what would meet our basic expectations. And a good example of this would be proponents should have 3 or more years experience in delivering similar services. Similar services mean A, B, C, and D. You'll see that typically in a VCC RFP. In your response, you want to be very specific to our definition of what similar means. If you give us generic stuff that you happen to have kind of kicking around your organization that doesn't address those specifics, you're not going to score well. And if the RFP says 3 or more years, and you give us exactly 3 years worth of experience, you're going to score meets requirements. And the fact that you've actually been doing it for 10, but you never told us about it, means you're not going to score as well as you could have scored. If you got more, tell us. That's how you get the higher scores, okay, in any RFP process. So benchmarks are a real important piece of this. Okay, questions on this?
Starting on a new company and don't have a 3 years.
Ah, perfect. Good question. So sometimes you're going to be a brand new company and you've got really experienced people in your company, but your organization is new. So what do you do if the RFP is asking you or saying you should have, as a company, you should have 3 or more years of experience? Okay. Number one thing, ask. Here's a situation we're in. What can we do? And it might be, the answer might be, well, tell us what your principals have in similar experience, and we'll consider that for your organization. Or the answer might be, no, we're looking for organizations who have existed for a while, and yes, you're welcome to bid on this, but you may not score well in this area. Now, if that's the answer, you might be able to make up for it in other sections of the RFP where you could score better. Be your choice, though, as to whether or not you want to bid.
Would that question be like an amendment or something?
Yep, it would be your question, and the answer would be posted as an addendum to the RFP. Everybody would see it, but then you have the information that you need. Yeah. One thing about the standard RFP process is that it's very important that all vendors get the same information at the same time. That's all part of our legal obligations in the process. Now, there are some processes that don't do it that way, but that's typically not what the college does. We tend to stick to the more traditional RFPs.
Are there any questions that you can ask that are confidential?
Confidential questions. For most RFPs, no. If you ask a question, we will post the question and the answer. I know for myself, if the question is identified who's asking, I'm going to take out that information. I might put proponent name in brackets rather than what their name actually is, just to make it a bit more anonymous. Now, having said that, though, there certainly are some RFP processes where they have a confidentiality ability to ask questions in it. Those tend to be not the traditional RFPs. And it becomes complicated because a lot of these RFPs will say you can ask your question in confidence, but the government entity might decide to answer it for everybody if they think it's something everybody needs to know, or they might just answer it directly to you. So if you're doing a process like that, it needs to be clearly spelled out. If there's not a provision about confidential questions in the RFP, there isn't one. Okay. Any other? Yes.
I just did one where the requirements were broken down by percentage.
Yes.
Does the college do that?
Yes. Actually, it's a really good idea to do that. We tend to do it at the high level. We talked about, you've got your approach, capabilities, and price as an example. That's the level that I provided so that you as vendors, you can see where is the college putting its importance. And if there's minimum scores, we have to tell you what they are. So the point breakdown can be hugely helpful for you to know where to spend your time. If price is worth 50% of the available points, that's a huge message for you. Really getting the price down is an important piece of this. If it's 20% and the 45 is on your capabilities, then that's telling you the college really sees experience as the key to this particular requirement. The breakdown is really important. Now, if you see an RFP that doesn't have it and you want to know it, what can you do? Ask. Yep, you can always ask the contact person, what's the breakdown? Yep. They need to have it. For the evaluations, they need to have it. Now, they might not give it to you in every single question that's asked, but at least at a high level, you'll know it. Let's say we do an RFP, price is unclear. So you're a proponent there, and you give us an all-in annual amount. This is what you're going to charge us for it. And you think, okay, I'm going to give them a unit cost. So for each unit of service that they buy, it's going to cost this. They can buy as much or as little as they want out of it. And you submit a proposal that says, we're going to do cost plus on a percentage. Now, in an RFP, the evaluation is based on pre-established criteria, some of which will be your benchmarks and some of which will be the things that if you're experienced in this area, you should talk about. Now, price is the one exception. That's where we compare one proposal against another. In most RFPs, it'll say that the lowest price that met all the mandatories and minimum scores, they're going to get all the points, and everybody else will be prorated on how close they got to the lowest price. And there's usually a formula that we use to do that. So if I've got an RFP out there where I get such a wide range of prices, how am I going to do that direct comparison? There's just no way to do it. So it's very important for you that you understand what price are you being asked to do and what's included in this price. And I'll take travel as an example. Let's say that you're doing services and the services are you've got the two campuses and you're going to be going back and forth between the campuses several times a day for your services. Okay? So let's say that you submit a proposal and you figure, okay, I know I'm going to be going back and forth a few times a day and I have to have the truck and I got to have the people to drive it, and so I've included that in my costs. And you put in a proposal and you figure, yeah, well, I don't know how many times I'm going to have to go back and forth. It's going to be every day, but is it once or is it 5 times? I'm going to charge my mileage on top of my price. So now I'm comparing your two prices, but they're not the same. One includes that back and forthing and one doesn't. So that's another thing that we need to be really clear on. What does price include? Because we have to do those direct comparisons. And we don't want to make it unfair to anybody. So if we tell you, you should have included the back and forth mileage, and you say, well, where did it say that in the RFP? And it doesn't. Or we tell you, you shouldn't have included, you can go, well, where does it say that? I mean, we have to be clear on our RFP. And you need to ask. If it's not clear to you, you need to ask, because you're doing everybody a favor if you do that. But as I said, this is strictly math. Price is strictly math.
Isn't that a flaw, though, on the VC bid process? Like, should there not be a standardized form that someone who maybe is unqualified on the government side is putting something on the VC bid site without proper specifications and stuff on it?
Well, and it comes down to the broad use of BC bid. The BC bid is used by so many organizations that there is no way that we would police them. We put the website and make it as a tool that's available for the convenience of both vendors and the broader public sector. But it's not our job to tell them what their solicitation should look like. I mean, that's up to them. And there are a lot of people that write RFPs who have never done it before or have done it very seldom. The same as there are a lot of people who write proposals, the responses to the RFPs, who aren't very experienced in it. The more experienced you are, the better you are at these things. That's why I'm never going to tell you that every RFP on BC Bid is going to be really well written, because there's lots that aren't. I'm never going to tell you that there's a perfect RFP. I keep striving for it myself, haven't made it yet. But the important thing for you to know is that if it doesn't make sense, that you have a mechanism to get the information you need. So you've got the information that tells you, is it worth my time to submit a proposal in this? Do I think I might be successful? This whole mechanism about asking questions, that needs to be there for every single RFP. There's a contact person, you can ask them questions, and you need to do that. Because a lot of times, if they're inexperienced in the RFPs and you start asking questions as a vendor who's interested in bidding on this, they're going to start to realize with these questions coming in, oh yeah, we should have thought about this, and we should have thought about that. And
2 days, and then they had to crash the whole RFP because what they did was asked for list price less a discount. They didn't say who's list price. So it could have been totally gray.
Yeah, and I find that that's not an unusual thing to do in terms of a pricing strategy. If you're looking at buying goods where there's a wide range. I think automotive parts is an example, or streaming video is another example, where there's just tons and tons of titles of different types of things. You can't do an effective solicitation where you're asking for a price on absolutely every item, especially when you've got hundreds of them. So one strategy is to do the percentage off list. But then that becomes problematic, because if one vendor is using list price A, and they're going to give you a 20% discount off of list price A, and another vendor is using their own list, this is list price B, and they're going to give you a 50% discount off of it, but when you do the math, it's actually cheaper to go with the 20% because their list prices are so much less. That's one of the challenges that we have. And in terms of the college here, when it comes to doing solicitations that are looking for a percentage off list, our evaluation process is not just the percentage. Unless there is a standard list, percentage of this list where everybody's using the same list, unless there's that, it's not just, if you give 20 and you give a 50% discount, we're just not using those numbers. It's what is it really costing us? Yeah. We had an RFP that we did a number of years ago where the price that we asked for, that we were evaluating, was a unit price, and it had a formula built into it as to how you determine your unit price. This is for social services. And so they took an annual price that they proposed and then how much service they were going to be providing, and they came out with this unit price, and that's what we were using for evaluations. And we had an example and all the rest of it, but the vendors, the proponents, were telling us what their unit price was. So we had a proponent submit, and you could see an error in their math, and their error caused their unit pricing to be about 1/3 what it should have been. Well, of course, we're doing our due diligence, and we see this as an error, and your first obvious thing is, okay, well, we'll just fix the math. But we checked with our legal advisor, and we were told that, no, you can't change their price. That's a material part of their proposal, and it is whatever it is, however they've arrived at it is their business. Their price is firm. You cannot change it, and neither can they. So we went through the rest of the evaluation process. Now that vendor was not successful for other reasons. They weren't our highest scoring. But had they been, our very first conversation would have been with them, are you prepared to do this services for 1/3 the money you thought you were getting? Because they can't change it either. They gave us a unit price. Which is why my advice to the college here has been that if there's any math like that that needs to be done, if we're going to be evaluating price based on a unit cost, explain it all in the RFP, but make a clear statement that VCC will do all the calculations. Then whether the vendor does it or not doesn't matter. We're going to, and we're going to go use our numbers to ensure that consistency.